Hi, welcome to Bobbing Along with Bob, who can be found at bobdub on minds.com. Each week I talk with interesting and informative guests who share their knowledge, insight and opinion with us all. This show is aimed at mature people who don't mind strong opinions and language because both may be expressed. I take full responsibility for my own opinions and no platform or sponsor is liable for anything contained in this show. All my work falls under a Creative Commons Attribution license, so if you rebroadcast, reuse or redistribute this material, please make sure to credit me as the original creator. Hi everyone, thanks very much for coming back again. This is another episode of Bobbing Along, 2 in 1 month. We're going for a record. And today I have to introduce to you Davidhogg of minds.com. You must
Mine's Davidhogg. That's my legalese. Yes.
Very good. Who is coming along to tell us his story.
Yes, but you forgot your theme song.
Did I?
Let's bobbing along with bobdub. Bobbing along with bobdub. We're a bobbing along with bobdub. Bobbing along. Okay, there you go.
Oh, you got it right. That was so good. You've obviously been practicing.
Thank you. I live on the edge.
Good place to be. Good place to be.
Yes. I once was at my doctor's office, and he basically asked what I'd been doing, and I told him what I'd been up to, and he said to me, life is like a parade that, needs to be viewed from above.
Mm.
And it sounds to me like you're playing on the floats, and I think he was wrong personally. Life is a parade, but it shouldn't be viewed from above. You need to get on those floats and you need to play your rear end off.
Mm-hmm.
It's too short to be an observer. Live every day like it's your last. However, you need to plan for tomorrow. I do not have a bucket list. I've had a full life. I've done all sorts of crazy stuff. So, it's not over for me yet, but I'm not going to sit down and it's like, oh, I want to make sure this gets done and that gets done or whatever. If I go in the next 5 minutes, I've lived a very full life. On my deathbed, I might be negotiating. Yeah. I had a friend, committed suicide, and unfortunately it happened while we were in the middle of just some stupid little spat where we weren't talking to each other, and I never had the chance to say that I was sorry for just when you're friends you have little spats. So I was really sorry that it had happened. So from that point on, I'm like, you know what? Arguing, squabbling, little petty things, life's too short because sometimes you don't have that chance to tell them that you were sorry. You need to reconsider your actions, especially when you're letting emotions take you over. And sometimes you can't say that you're sorry. My father was a petrochemical engineer.
Ooh.
Yes. And my mother was an artist. She painted, she wrote song lyrics. So I'm the byproduct of art and science. So I have a little of both in me. It has definitely shaped everything that I have done. When I was in elementary school, they pulled me out of the music class to keep me into the art class because they're like, oh, this boy's really talented. He doesn't need to take a music class. He's just going to do art. And then in high school, my freshman year, you weren't allowed to wander the hallways after lunch. So I would kind of hang out by the hall monitor waiting to be released from lunch. And she's like, well, you've got quite a voice, can you, she had someone cover her duties and pulled me into the choir room and played the piano and, sing this, sing that, sing that. So she was like, I need to get you into choir. It's like, what do you do in sixth period? It's like, well, I have art. She says, I want to get you out of art and put you into choir. So I've had, that kind of driving me. And then I always look at things on an engineer level because of my father. When I was a little kid, do you remember Evil Knievel?
Oh,
The guy
yeah.
on his motorcycle?
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
As a young kid, I loved Evil Knievel.
Awesome.
And we're watching, I think it was Wide World of Sports, always had Evil Knievel. And one day he unleashes his wheelie car, his little car that would do wheelies. And I was amazed as a kid. And the moment the segment was over, I run upstairs to my bedroom, break out my Tinker toys, and I figure out that I can build a wheelie car. I use an old battery as a weight and everything. And, I build a wheelie car. In kindergarten, I went to an experimental school. They had no rules. It was up in Maryland. And so we go to kindergarten, and I am told that the teacher says, so we're going to learn how to spell words. So let's go over some of the words that you kids would like to spell. And she goes around the room. And when it comes to me, she asks, what word do you want to spell? And I say, trapezoid. She had to look it up to see if it was a real word.
Oh, fantastic.
Because of that, when it came time to go to first grade, they decided that they were going to take 5 of us kids from kindergarten, and we were going to go immediately to the second grade.
Ooh.
So I skipped first grade, and in second grade, again, there were no rules, no structure. You could do whatever you felt like. It was a very hippie type of school.
Mm.
So because of that, I was really good at math and building stuff with blocks and stuff like that. And we ended up moving to Texas halfway through the school year. And they put me in a math class in second grade in Texas, and it's word problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting here and I can't read. They totally skipped over basically sitting down and teaching me how to read. So it's kind of ironic. It was because of trapezoid, I had a hole in my education. They're like, he's so smart, he didn't even know how to read. So they actually sent me back to first grade.
Gosh.
Halfway through the school year.
Yeah.
Luckily, I caught on really quick and was able to advance.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I used to be a technology evangelist, and one of the things I always tell people is technology is a double-edged sword.
Mm.
Well, knowledge is also a double-edged sword.
Mm.
Things that can cut one way will cut the other. So it kind of shaped my personality. Being sent back a grade was humbling, even though I was already a grade ahead. Having the background, I've always been a problem solver. After high school, I went to go work at a drugstore as a cashier, and we used to get little notices on their pharmacy computer. That's back when I actually had computers. These people are doing this, or they figured out that the cosmetics area, people had figured a way to unlock the cash register. So someone would distract the beautician, and then somebody else would walk over to where the cash register is and reach in, hit the little trigger that would open the cash drawer. So I'm thinking, I can fix this. So I told my boss, I said, I can build an alarm for that cash register. It'll cost just under $5. I'll go down to Radio Shack on my lunch break, and I'll get the parts that you need. So for under $5, I got a little project box, a mercury tilt switch, a battery, and a little piezo alarm. And, wired the thing together at lunch, said, here you go. And you put that inside the cash register in the back. If anybody reaches in to try to lift the back of that cash register, beep, you'd hear it over the entire store. So, so he sent the schematic out, and they ended up, everybody had one of these little boxes in their cash register for the company I worked for, and it solved the problem. I was 19, yeah. So I've always just invented things because I saw a need. And so That is my father's engineering brain, and that is my mother's artistic brain. I loved Rube Goldberg. He invented contraptions that were overly elaborate. I like to describe it, the cartoons where I think the dog is after the cat or whatever, and he builds his little torture device that the chicken will lay an egg, it rolls down the hill, it pushes the candle over, that pops the balloon, that causes the little boot to kick the bucket to spill the water. Mousetrap. Yeah, the game Mousetrap. That's Rube Goldberg. So I have always loved that stuff. And so I used to build those in my bedroom as a kid. We went to the Smithsonian, and it just so happened to be the Rube Goldberg exhibit. And I was in heaven. It was like this world was built just for me. That would have been in the late 60s, very early 70s.
Right.
No later than like 1970. I was still at school.
Right.
I just started elementary school or the second grade. We lived up in Rockville, Maryland, and so that was really close to DC. And yeah, 4 or 5 trips to the Smithsonian sparks your imagination. They used to give you this pair of headphones that you would put on, and when you would walk, when an exhibit would happen, it would play the audio for you. And I was just amazed at how that worked. I wasn't so much intrigued by the information they're giving me. It was more the technology behind it. How do these headphones work? I had a desire to find out what makes things tick. And sadly, I took apart everything that was ever given to me. Some of them went back together, some didn't, but that's called a learning experience. I have always been kind of on the edge of whatever the technology is, even as a very young child. One of the things I have done is I am the very first person to 3D animate Mr. Magoo. Of course, he was blind. And the irony is I was hired by a company that made computer monitors that had Mr. Magoo as their spokesperson to 3D animate him and do a presentation for their Comdeck show. So I got roped into doing that. And that was while I was in college. So I was staying in a half of a garage apartment during college. And I guess it wasn't even a garage. It was more of a covered parking structure that had a little tiny living space above it.
Okay.
It was about to be condemned. When I moved out, they condemned it because it was slanted. We used to call it the Wacky Shack, because you could take the trackball out of your computer and set it on the floor and watch it roll out the room around the corner into the next room. Little tiny apartment, and we ended up packing it full of state-of-the-art computer equipment, and we worked around the clock to get this demo done in time for Comdex. So it was me and 2 other friends that were artists, and yeah, we just pumped the whole thing out. So I did that, and back in the day, computers used to just make a little tiny beep on their speaker. And a company called Creative Labs invented something called a sound blaster. It was a card that went in your computer, and it enabled it to do some music as well as digitize speech. So I had to get one of those to make my demo work. So I learned the ins and outs of how that product works. And one day I'm looking for an update on drivers. It used to be a really rare thing to do back in the day. And matter of fact, there was no internet. You had to call up on something called a bulletin board system. So I called the Creative Labs bulletin board system to get drivers. And lo and behold, they're like, we are hiring. We need people in these areas. And one of them was the large town I lived in, to do product demonstrations.
Ooh.
So I sent them a response, and I said, I have owned one of everything that you make, and I fully understand how they work. So when the guy was scheduling his interviews, he said, okay, because I got all these people lined up to interview at the airport, but I'm going to have you last because I have a feeling that it's going to take a little more time with you.
Wow. So you almost had the job before you got the interview.
Yes. So I show up and I talk to him and everything, and of course I get the job. And my job was on weekends. I would go to the big computer stores, and I would have my little computer demo model, and I would hook it up, and I would sell sound cards and CD-ROMs. That would have been early '90s, early '90s when the CD-ROM came out. So I would, basically sit there in my little shirt and would sell sound cards and CD-ROM upgrades, inside of someone's store. And anytime there would be a convention or an exhibit or something like that, they would pull from us little external people, and they would fly us out to Vegas or New York or what have you to do our demonstrations, at trade shows. And so I went to, I don't know, I think it was one of the Vegas shows, and got back, and then I get a phone call from one of the guys that I had met at the show, and he said, "We have an opening in our developer relations department." He says, "I just started with this company. Last week was my first week, and then when I get back from the show, they tell me they need someone." And he says, "I just met about 200 people, but your name is the one that kept going through my head."
Wow.
So they hired me to become a technology evangelist.
Wow.
And this was back in '95.
90.
So I packed up everything. I was living in Houston at the time, moved to San Jose, California, and started my world in Silicon Valley tech. It just fell out of the sky. They wanted me to evangelize audio products to their developers. And the company was just starting to roll out something called a 3D accelerator. It's a product that never existed before. Computers had a really hard time with 3D. And so that was kind of happening on the sidelines. And I said, guys, I just finished doing a bunch of 3D animation for a company, and 3D and virtual reality is kind of my hobby. And they were like, "Oh, really? Well, we need someone to evangelize this new 3D product. So, don't stop worrying about audio, and we're going to have you take over this whole 3D evangelism." And, you'd go to game developers, show them the technology, and convince them to support it. Next thing you know, I'm running a 3D evangelism. And after a couple of years, I get a call from a huge graphics card company. They were a graphics company that was going to start doing audio products. And they said, "We want you to come on board and do our audio evangelism for us because we just love you." And I was like, "No, I'm happy. My family's here, everything." And then in Silicon Valley fashion, they started waving cash at me more than I was prepared to understand. So, I'm like, "Okay, I will stop doing 3D and I will join your company, and we will go ahead and we'll do this audio stuff."
Okay.
So I show up, and within 6 months, the audio project is canceled, and they fire their graphics guy, and they put me in charge of graphics.
Wow.
I would have been in my mid-20s by then. I knew the lingo and I knew the basics, and I have the gift of gab, in case you hadn't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
So, next thing you know, I'm running around with this company's flagship product.
Oh,
Made a really good name for the product, did really well. And then they started having me evangelize technologies that were in the product. There is something called texture compression. Back in the day, the amount of memory on a video card was really important. And if you use large textures, you'd fill up that memory real quick. So some of our engineers invented this thing that would compress the textures on the board,
wow.
kind of like, a zip file in graphics form. So that became my goal, was to get texture compression on everything. And I guess I got a little carried away and started talking to some of the hardware companies like Nintendo and Sony and stuff like that, just telling them what I'm doing. And they were like, really? You can do that? It's like, yes, we invented this thing and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, we want to have that on our consoles. So the GameCube and the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox all ended up having this technology just because I couldn't keep my mouth shut.
Oh, magnificent. Yeah,
Yes.
wow. And you were the
Yes.
absolute like hot shot golden boy.
Yes, they flew me around the globe. I have
Goodness.
traveled the world because of it. My very first trip to Japan,
Mm.
where I'm talking to Japanese game developers about this new texture compression technology stuff.
Oh, yes.
And so here I am, I'm sitting in a conference room with about 8 other gentlemen from the game company, and I've got my translator with me, and I'm talking, and I notice that 2 of the guys at the table are asleep while I'm giving a presentation. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing my audience. So I ramp up the energy and I get more energetic because I don't want people falling asleep. And so I'm totally like I drank 6 Red Bulls. I'm all over the place talking about this stuff. And the 2 guys on the other end of the table nod off. And the first 2 that were asleep, they're awake. And I'm like, what the heck? So I ramp up the energy even more. I mean, I'm like Crazy Eddie, the guy sells the electronics late at night. I'm just about to jump up on the table, to keep these people awake. And and those guys wake up and another guy goes to sleep. And I'm like, I can't believe this. So from then on, I'm just full bore energy doing all this. And they have me do some press interviews, and I'm just super energy crazy about this technology. And just towards the end, I'm like, I talked to my translator. I'm like, people are falling asleep on me. Am I not entertaining? Am I not keeping their interest? He says, no, it's a regular thing. If you're not talking about something that concerns that person's department, they'll just nod off. And then when you start talking about that stuff, they'll wake up and, and somebody else will go to sleep if you're not talking about something that pertains to what they do. So as a side effect of this, I go back to the States and I get a call from our Japan office, and they said, Japan wants you back. I'm like, okay, why? What happened? They said, well, one of the people from the press, they wrote an article, not so much about our product, but about you. I'm like, me? What do you mean about me? And they said, well, they called you the body no gema. And I'm like, okay, what is that? And they said, well, there's a cartoon and it's called The World of Bari Bari. And it is about a guy who is obsessed with motorcycles. Everything in his life is motorcycles. And you got labeled the Bari Bari of gaming. And since this article came out, our phones have been ringing off the wall with press people that want to interview the body no gema. So my next trip out to Japan, normally I stay there a week. They schedule an extra week for me just to do press interviews. So I had my 15 minutes of fame in Japan as the body no gema. So yeah, I sat in my hotel room as press person after press person shows up, and they're filming me. They got cameras in my face, and they just really want to know about the body no gema. And one of our spiels was with this texture compression, you could use stuff that was photorealistic. So if you walked up to a wall, instead of seeing some little low res wall texture, it looked like a real wall. And we were kind of marketing it as a suspension of disbelief. When you're playing a game,
Yeah.
it's a game, it's not real. Everything is low resolution. It's all pixelated and everything. Well, we were looking to remove that suspension of disbelief by giving people realistic looking textures. That chain link fence, when you got close enough to it, you could see bits of rust and stuff like that on it.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just like a metal colored square. So apparently me talking about suspension of disbelief and being very high and into the energy I was giving off, they thought I was a crazy guy obsessed with games. You kind of have to have that non-realistic stuff added. Otherwise, it just becomes real life. So you have to be able to do things in the game world that you cannot do in the real world. Otherwise, why make the sacrifice to live in that game world if the real world is much better? So the ability to fly and things like that you couldn't do normally. In the early days of PC gaming, they always said that kids really love driving games. They're not allowed to drive. They're able to do something that's in the real world that they're forbidden. And adults seem to tend to lean towards the flight simulators and stuff like that, because in the real world, they're not allowed to fly an airplane. It's a privilege.
Okay.
So you would find your adults with their flight simulator setups, and grown men would buy the flight yoke and all the cockpit controls and all this, so they could they could fly a Cessna virtually.
God.
So the game worlds allow us to do things that we can't normally do in the real world, and normally it's in a consequence-free environment. Kids are playing Grand Theft Auto, where they can steal cars and run from the police and everything, and it's consequence free. Whereas in the real world, everything has consequences. So you have to be able to do crazy stuff like put your fire in the water.
Yes.
So a lot of the game industry was built on stuff that I went out and evangelized. My name still shows up on credits on things, or I get entered into the special thanks. My name is all over the industry. And it got to the point that in the very late 90s, the market began to crash. There were like 36 graphics chip manufacturers, and that shrunk down to 3. Eventually, the company where I worked, they sold off the graphics division to a company called VIA, and started shutting things down. So where I worked, they weren't going to have a new product for at least 2 years. And as I was told, that I was very expensive.
Wow.
So they ended up closing my department and getting laid off. So one of my buddies worked at a game company, and he said, you know what, you should take like 6 months off, because the industry is really bad right now and it'll recover. He says, but you can come and you can work at the company where I work, for 6 months, so you don't get bored. So that company was George Lucas's game company. I was like, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Yeah, I'll do it.
Fully.
So I went there to work for 6 months and stayed for about 13 years. Excellent company. They ended up pretty much inventing a position for me. Well, originally I was just doing, just a routine job. I worked in their compatibility department because I knew all about hardware. And like I said, did that for about 6 months. And when that position was ending, they were like, we need to figure out a way to keep you here. So they invented something they called pitware, which all of the game testers were in something called the pit. It used to be an old library. It was kind of a sunken down area. So I was the tech guy for all of these game testers. So it was like a specialized IT, because for game testing, IT only likes to have 1 or 2 types of computers, and they just replicate that throughout the company. But we needed one of everything and every configuration known to man. So I was the guy that could do that. I was the guy that when they had a tech issue, they came to me. This is what we need to do. So a lot of it involved the testing and the hardware to make things happen. And one of the things is occasionally we would get messages come through our company email. Hey, the voice actor for such and such, we didn't get a line. We need somebody that can talk like Obi-Wan Kenobi, or we need someone that can imitate this character or that character. So as a sideline, I started doing little voices. It might be one line in what was normally a 2 hour dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And normally it was in the tutorial phase that's where they would miss, because the PC version might have to have a different line than the GameCube version or something like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
yes, my claim of fame is use the stealth button to activate it. So, yeah, that's my big claim to fame. Yeah. I have been playing on the floats.
And now you can just sit back and say, look, I was there.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah. I still see things today. It's like, oh my God, I remember that. And oh, that's a such and such. And that's because of this and that.
Yeah.
Now 3D accelerators, everybody who plays a game's got a 3D graphics card.
Yeah.
And I was there in the beginning, the very first graphics card, the very first graphics chip. So in a way, I've kind of cemented my legacy in the game development arena. Virtual life is where it's at now. I live out in the country. I used to get my internet via a microwave antenna that basically was pointed at a water tower 3 towns over, and that's where my internet had come from.
So did you design that?
No. That was somebody else's idea.
Okay.
But yeah, you'd probably see me out here with a Pringles can and some foil trying to, get the Wi-Fi from the farmhouse across the road.
Oh, how fantastic!
But recently, the main road off the highway, they put a fiber line running down.
Oh,
so yes, I now have a fiber. It's only a 100 megabit, but it's a good connection and it's nice and fast. And Starlink is a really cool technology. It was one of my options for here. The only problem with Starlink is about once or twice a day, you will lose some signal.
Yeah.
The dish will tilt and everything, but there's a couple of spots where it's just inevitable you lose track of the satellite. But for someone who has no internet, a couple of times that it goes out, and it's for a very short period, a couple of times, that's fine. My use of internet lately is I really need to make sure that my internet is working. I do some live radio with The Ship Sucks. I'm doing podcasts and live streams, and I need something that's just, not going to cut out. It's better than no internet, and Starlink would probably be how I got my internet if they didn't add the fiber in, because the microwave just wasn't fast enough and it would drop and all sorts of stuff. Well, we already have space junk. We've got stuff up there that just has fallen apart or broken up or whatever. And of course, all it takes is a tiny little micro pebble to destroy these things. So he's not putting up space junk. He is enabling people around the world to communicate, which really does make the world a much smaller place. I mean, you are essentially on the other side of the globe, and you and I are having a talk as if we were in the room together.
It's so weird.
For you, it's late. For me, it's early.
Yeah. And here we are.
And I remember when you used to get yelled at if you even thought about trying to call your friend in another state, because long distance was expensive.
Oh, expensive.
You had to wait until 8 o'clock at night, and mom brought out the egg timer and set it for like 5 minutes. And if you hadn't hung up by the time that little bell went off, you were in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we walk around with a communications device on us at all times. Unfortunately, they are going to attach that phone to us somehow. It's going to happen. The dystopian world of 1984 is going to be here. Your phone is already a tracking device. One of the nice things is that I can opt to leave my phone behind. So if I want to get in my car and go drive out in the country and don't want Google to track my movements, I can leave the phone behind. However, if my spouse or my friend brings their phone with them, they can easily track associations.
Yes.
So Google knows all of the people that I've hung out with.
Mhm.
They know my schedule. But when that is kind of sewn in you, there'll be no escape.
Mm.
So again, technology is a double-edged sword.
So-
It's nice that to think, well, if I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I'm in a car accident, that I can make a call. Someone's going to know. Or, they're monitoring my heart rate. They can tell I'm having a heart attack and they can, send help. But I'm also never private again.
Mm.
And they will know each and every person that I hang out with and how long I've hung out with them. When I first moved out here in the country, I was, trying to be semi-retired. I had stopped working for a bit to kind of recover from everything. And all I would do is, like, every Wednesday at around 10, I would drive into the little town to the laundromat to go do my laundry. So, Google likes to track everywhere you go, and they like to make assumptions on things. So Google labeled that place as my work. Because it is somewhere that I go on a regular basis.
How funny. Oh, yeah.
So, yep.
Crazy.
Their AI basically said, oh, he must work at this laundromat because he goes there about the same time, once a week. A cell phone can exist. I mean, at one point they had magazines with a cell phone built in them. It was a little screen, so the technology is so cheap that it can be given away with the cost of a magazine. They used to joke about digital watches. Remember when they first came out, they were hundreds of dollars.
Yes.
And people joked, oh, in the future, you'll get them free in your breakfast cereal. Well, lo and behold, yes, you can get a digital watch. Of course, now it's obsolete. Nobody has a watch anymore.
No.
Watches have become status items. The time is on your cell phone.
Yes.
The cell phone has replaced so many common items. People are like, well, why did Radio Shack go out of business? It's like, well, let's take a look at a Radio Shack catalog from the 80s. Oh, look, here's answering machines. What's an answering machine? Well, it used to be if you couldn't answer your telephone, it would answer for you. It's like, well, my cell phone does that automatically. I don't need an answering machine. Oh, look, they sell alarm clocks. What do I need an alarm clock for? My phone can tell me, what time it is. Egg timers. I don't need an egg timer. I can say, set a timer for 20 minutes. VCRs. Why would you record television? It's got a camera on it. It is a multi-purpose device. It is like Star Trek's tricorder,
Yeah.
I was out in California for 18 years.
Gosh, hey. And was it paradise?
California is a beautiful state.
Yeah.
I was there a bunch of tech geeks, but Californians in general are a different breed. I lean towards the conservative side, and California is all liberal. So you learn to keep your mouth shut about things, which is probably best because your coworkers do not need to know your political leanings and your ideologies. You're there to do a job.
True.
So in a way that benefited me, and when my friends would start talking about things, I would just kind of tune out and not worry about it. Of course, now I'm in Texas, so I'm back home. I lived in Texas most of my life. Wonderful weather, lousy people. Texas, wonderful people, lousy weather.
The heat. Is it the heat?
It is hot and humid. I am in between two giant cities out in the country. I live in what they call an unincorporated community. There's about 200 of us hillbillies out here in the woods. So there's no store. We have to share someone else's post office. But it's wonderful. The only rules we have are the county rules.
Yeah.
So there's no city ordinances or anything like that. And yeah, I'm sitting on about 12 acres of property. Got a little catfish pond, got my chickens. I have slowed down. So great place to be during the pandemic, believe me.
Yes. Yes.
I ended up coming down with it in January of this year. I was really down for almost a month, compromised. I have
Mhm.
kidney failure to the point in which I have to have dialysis.
Right.
And matter of fact, so when I ended up getting COVID, they had me go to a different dialysis center where they'd set up a COVID unit.
Oh, wow.
And when I first started going, there were only 3 of us. And when I last started going, there were 14 of us. So I got to watch the COVID numbers run through the town where I was. My better half, the moment we got diagnosed with COVID, we they have the little testing centers that you drive through, and
Mhm.
we used to joke every time we drive past it, there was nobody there, and it's like nothing even open. So it was New Year's Eve when we're going to get tested,
Ooh.
and there was a massive, massive line of cars, like 3 rows deep. It took about 3 hours for us to get up to the testing center.
Oh, God.
But yeah, the cars were going both directions, so we got to see the people that were lined up for testing as we moved, and we began to play COVID or hypochondriac. So we would look at the car in the opposite direction. It's like, yeah, she's got COVID. She's definitely got COVID. It's like, no, he's a hypochondriac. He does not have COVID. So you could spot just looking in the cars,
Right. Yes. Yeah. Oh, how fun.
Yep,
So,
lots of healthy people waiting in line. I looked at her and I told her that I loved her more than she will ever know. I didn't tell her what my plans were. We went to her father's one day, and sadly, I can't remember what the discussion was. But it was, basically to the point where I need to tell him, hey, I'm planning on marrying your daughter, you know. So
you announced it.
yes, so it was a little more than a year ago. And
Okay.
it was low key. We'd both been married before,
Mhm.
and we, I kept telling her I was going to take her to the JP, but she wanted something, that her kids could show up. It was very, very small,
Yes.
but you know, um, one of the things I wanted to make sure is, when something happens to me, because my time here is limited with the
Yeah.
kidney failure, um, that there would be no question as to what was to be given to her.
Right.
So, if she was just somebody staying with me or my girlfriend or whatever, um,
Mm.
if my sister, for example, wanted to come in and contest the will, oh, she came in and she manipulated him and this and that,
Yeah.
I don't want her to go through that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that everything gets handed to her. Basically, it'll go to her kids eventually, but I want to make sure she had a nice, comfortable place to live.
No.
When I met her, she was a scared little bunny rabbit. She was all shaking and nervous, and uh, she has had all sorts of things happen to her in life, and
Uh,
she really needed somewhere safe to be. She didn't realize that, but
mhm.
you know, um, matter of fact, the first time she came out here, she was really nervous because it's heavy woods,
Mhm.
and I'm living in a schoolhouse. It was a one-room schoolhouse that was built in the 1800s.
Oh,
Matter of fact, I even have the school bell on the porch. So it's a really old house.
yeah.
Inside, it got converted to a 2-bedroom little home, but yeah, she was really nervous, and she did not like to even leave the house. And one day I'm coming back from work, and she is out in the middle of the fields in a sundress, uh, saying, there's berries everywhere."
How
So
lovely.
her OCD got her to basically explore places where I was amazed to see her out in the middle of a field, like in chest high, tall grass.
Oh,
But
wow.
she's right. We had dewberries everywhere. And yeah, she's out there in a little tiny sundress just picking berries. And it's like,
Ouch.
you don't want to be there. There's snakes.
Gosh, it sounds
But
like you're living the American dream, Mr. Hogg.
I think I am. Sometimes I wonder if I passed a long time ago and this is this is the afterlife. I have somebody that really, really cares for me.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that I had got divorced is I'd been diagnosed with kidney failure, which it's fine. It was in the very, very early stages. It was just gonna,
Mm-hmm.
watch what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And as the disease progressed, I hit stage 4B, which meant, hey, dialysis is going to happen.
Mm.
And the wife and I, we weren't getting along well for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my friends said, hey, would you give up a kidney to her? And she laughed and said, good luck. So 6 weeks later, I was filing for divorce. It's
Yeah,
like
that's
my life
enough.
is short and I am not going to spend the rest of it with this person.
Oh, ouch.
Yes.
That must have been a real slap in the face for you.
Yeah. To laugh and just say good luck. My new wife is like, I'm going to give you my kidney.
No.
And I was like, I don't want to take your kidney because if my body rejects it, I'll never hear the end of it.
But is
And
your
she
body
said,
likely to reject it?
I don't know, but I don't think that her kidney is compatible.
You don't.
She's a totally different blood type. I can't use her
Okay.
kidney, but they do have a kidney swap deal. So she can donate her kidney to the pool. And then when someone else donates a kidney to the pool, if it's a fit, then I'll get that kidney. And they'll go through 10, 15, 20 swaps. You give me this one, I'll take that one. I'll give this one to so-and-so. So it becomes a possibility. Right now, my question is, am I going to allow her to do that?
Yeah.
If something were to happen, where one of her kidneys stopped working and I've got one and I've shortened her life, I'm not quite sure that I want to take on that responsibility.
Mm.
We're born with 2 kidneys. She needs her 2 kidneys. I'm sure that I will come across one.
Yes.
So, she may feel otherwise, and I haven't told her my decision. So as far as she's concerned, she's willing to give up a kidney. She wants to just donate it to the pool in general. That's her decision.
Yes.
But I don't really want her doing it if it's just for me.
Mm.
I'm robbing her of something that's really important, is the way I look at it. I mean, she wants me here longer and she's willing to make a sacrifice, which I understand. She has kids, and kids always need their mama, no matter how old they are, no matter how independent they think they are. They need their mama. And I sure would hate to, try to extend my time here and reduce her time as a result of it, and shorten the amount of time that she gets to spend with her kids.
Yeah. A very hard place to be in. Very hard place.
Yeah. And, the bottom line is she's her own person. She's going to do what she wants to do.
Yeah.
I cannot forbid her. Man, I sure would hate to see something happen. She gets in a car wreck or falls off a ladder or something and ends up damaging her good kidney.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a really tough call.
It's a tough call. But it must be wonderful to know that you have a woman who loves you that much that she would give you bits of her body. I mean, that's pretty awesome to be able to say that.
Yes. Yeah, it's a far different cry than my past marriage.
Yeah. And good on you. Well done. What a good decision you have made. You've got a few years. You may as well live them happy.
Yeah. there's a chance that I can survive up to 20 years on dialysis.
Wow.
But there's also a chance that the next time that I go in the chair and they run tests on me, they inform me that the dialysis isn't working anymore.
Oh.
When that happens, you've got about 2 or 3 weeks left. They run tests on us like once a month. They constantly check for, excuse me, phosphorus and calcium levels and potassium and all this stuff that your body doesn't filter out because of your kidneys. And as those levels get high, eventually the dialysis just no longer works.
Right. Yeah.
So I kind of live in a 2 to 3 week window.
Yes.
I dread going to dialysis, and there's some times that it's like, oh man, it would just be so great to, skip school for a day.
Yes.
But you never know what's going to happen. We had a really bad freeze last winter, and one day I couldn't go to dialysis just because the car would not get out of the driveway. There was snow and ice, and there was just no way. And then when I was able to go to dialysis the next session, it was so cold that their water froze. So all of a sudden, all the alarms start going off on the machines, and they had to shut us down and send us home early. So from that point on, it's like, well, I don't know when my next session's going to be. So I want to make sure that I always have a fresh 2 to 3 weeks when I find out things aren't working.
Right.
So, I normally I'm up at 5 a.m. to go and head into dialysis, where they hook me up to a chair for 4 hours and filter my blood. The alternative is a dirt nap, and I'm not ready to go yet. My gaming love really goes to the old games. One of the problems with working in the game industry is all of a sudden gaming was no longer an escape. It was your job. And it got to the point where if I fired up a game, I'd be like, oh, they're using trilinear filtering for this, and they're using mip mapping for that. And I began to look at it in a technological standpoint and not the escape it was. So I have rolled backwards. And a lot of my early childhood games, there's a game called Ultima, and I think I was introduced to Ultima 3. It's a role-playing game by a gentleman named Richard Garriott. I don't even know how many Ultimas they have now. But that experience, a friend of mine in high school had an Apple II, and me and a buddy went to his house, and he had this game. And it was during a 3-day weekend, and we spent the entire 3 days at his house. One guy would run the computer. Another guy would go through this little printout that we had, which is the cheat sheet or the walkthrough to get us through. And the third guy would sleep and ride his bike to the store to get more Mountain Dew for us. And we would just rotate positions. So you're either playing, helping, or sleeping and getting soda. And we played and finished that game, during a 3-day, school weekend.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
hardcore.
I've always loved the older stuff. I really love something called emulation, where what they have done is they have dumped the ROM chips or the programs from real arcade games, Space Invaders, Asteroid, Pac-Man, all that stuff. And some really intelligent people have figured out how to reproduce all of the chips that were on that board in software.
Wow.
So I can not just, I'm not playing a copy of Pac-Man on my computer. I am playing the original ROMs for Pac-Man on the computer. So yeah, it's not someone's version of it. It's the real thing. So it's the exact same game that I put a quarter in high school. That has progressed quite a bit. A gentleman wrote a physics simulator for pinball, and people were recreating, real life tables in pinball. And these guys working on this stuff for arcade software, it's called MAME. It's a multiple arcade machine emulator, MAME.
Okay.
They figured out that they could do the same with the ROMs inside of a pinball machine. because, you know, they had that little screen and it would have a game in it and it would control, you know, it would know what everything scored and all that. So they were like, hey, look, we can do pinball. And, you know, if you press the G button, it simulates if you hit this bumper or whatever, you know.
Yes.
Well, someone is like, hey, I can take this physics simulator for pinball where people are recreating stuff in 3D, and I can tie it to this arcade machine emulator. And so I can actually emulate a pinball machine on the computer. It'll run the original ROMs, it'll have all the right noises, and somebody else will recreate the play field in 3D, and you could play it on your little laptop computer. And so it was me and a group of about 20 or 30 of us in the community. And, you know, we would share all the work that we had done. And, hey, let's try this, let's try that. And eventually we wanted to get away from the little computer in front of us, stop using the keyboard and everything. And some of us started building like little pinball controllers, you know, so you'd have little flipper buttons and everything. And some of us said, hey, you know, I can put a switch in here. And so I can nudge, so I can actually move the control, and it simulates when you try to tilt the machine. And then we started using projectors, and we would project the image like on a cardboard box to build like a virtual pinball machine. And now it's gotten to the point where we take an actual pinball cabinet and we put a large television inside the pinball machine, turned sideways, and then we take another television and we put it in the back, like a back glass. And some of us take a third very small display and we put that in there, and it does that little scoreboard and everything, a little what's called a DMD, or a dot matrix display. And we have built pinball machines that you can touch, but the play field is nothing but a TV sitting inside of a real cabinet. And it's gotten really sophisticated. People have put little motors and shakers. I've put the little passive resonator, so when it plays the sound of the ball rolling, you can actually feel on the cabinet the ball is rolling. And real plungers now, so you can actually pull back on a plunger. We have accelerometers built in the machine, so you can nudge and tilt and bump. And so I now have a machine in my living room that plays every pinball game I ever played as a child, as well as some that people have invented. And I call it my time machine, because I can load up a game and it's like, I remember the first time I played this game. You know, I was 14 and we were at the mall and I went to the Aladdin's castle and I only had 1 quarter on me and I put it in that machine and I did terrible my first game, but I matched, so I got a free game. And on that free game, I was able to hit the high score and the special. And I had so many credits that by the time my mom came to come pick me up again, I just had to give somebody, hey, this has got 5 credits on it. Go play it, you know? And it was magical. And so it's a time machine. I was able to teleport back to a different time in my life.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
So as for my favorite games, simulation, emulation, classic games, and I dabble in virtual reality. I got myself a couple of headsets. I have always played with virtual reality. Back in the 90s, when they first started coming out with these headsets, because I was the hotshot evangelist, people would just give me hardware. It's like, check this out, check this out, check this out. So, you know, I had like one of everything, because they just, you know, wanted me to see it and play with it and find out what I thought, because I was the body no gamma. So I had somebody giving me one of these full headsets that used a little air puck to play and everything. And I was playing Duke Nukem in my little 1-bedroom apartment in San Jose, and was really getting into it. I have no idea how long I'd been playing, but all of a sudden I heard a little static noise and my world went dead. And it really felt bizarre to be pulled out of this virtual environment. So I take off my helmet and the world around me is gray and dusk. And I'm like, what is going on? So I walk outside and all of the street lights are dead. Apparently there was a massive power outage, but my brain was still in the virtual world. So I went back in the bedroom expecting to see my lifeless body in my gaming chair. And it was such a bad experience that I would not put on a VR helmet again. It took 20 years before I got the courage to
Good
enter that VR
heavens.
world,
Really?
because being yanked out of that environment was I swore, like I said, I was shocked that my body was not in that chair dead.
God.
Yeah, really bad experience to be yanked out of a virtual world that way. But since then, VR has come a long way, and Oculus, I guess now they're Meta,
Oh, yes.
has come out with really affordable headsets. And you know, I talked earlier about the suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
In VR, sometimes the brain doesn't really know what's real and what's not. To the point that, you know, as an older gentleman, to get up out of a chair, sometimes I need a little help. I need to use the handrail or a table or something like that. Well, I'm sitting playing a VR game, and it's to the point where I need to stand to get something done. So I try to use the table for help, but the table was a VR table. Because you forget, you know, and it's not that it's photorealistic or anything, which it's not, but your brain can easily compensate for things and fill in. The other weird experience is when you reach out for something and you encounter something in the real world that's not there in the virtual world. And when that something becomes your dog wanting attention, it is very bizarre.
Yeah.
You're like, what is this? Oh, it's my dog.
Oh, gosh.
Yep. So I dabble in VR now. I still do emulation and stuff. I have been looking a lot at artificial intelligence. I have run into some programs that you can type in what you want. You know, a pig on a bicycle wearing a MAGA hat. And it will do its best to draw you a pig on a bicycle wearing a MAGA hat. It's incredible. And there is something called DALL-E 2, you know, like Salvador Dali, which creates incredible images. So much so that they have to limit it. So, you know, as a memer, I'm like, dude, I can say, I want Joe Biden eating ice cream on a hoverboard. Well, they had to make sure that it doesn't know who Joe Biden is or who Davidhogg is or anything. So they've limited this program. The older programs I can type in Davidhogg and it draws Davidhogg. It knows who Davidhogg is. I can type in Biden, it draws Biden, Soros, Hillary Clinton, all these names. But this newer stuff that produces a much better result, they have limited on what it will do. You know, and I understand why, because when you can do photorealistic drawings from a whim, from a text, you know, I'm sure there's no images of Joe Biden sniffing children. So, you know, if I was to type that into DALL-E 2, you know, it has to make sure it doesn't do that. So in a way, it's limiting.
What do you think of Neuralink then?
Neuralink scares me to death. I used to joke with my friends. I'm like, you know, I'm a gamer and I'm, you know, on the next edge technology. But the day they want to put a 9-pin serial port in the back of my neck, I'm like, no, thank you. Before the Matrix, you know, existed, I was talking about serial ports in the back of the neck. So, Neuralink, its original idea is wonderful. It's to help people with a handicap.
Yes.
But again, all technology is a double-edged sword. So Neuralink kind of gives you the ability to hijack someone's brain, which is scary. And, with faster and faster wireless technologies, you could go to sleep and something can take control of it. I mean, I can't secure my bank account, my Xbox Live account. The stuff's getting hacked all the time. Imagine that being your brain, you know, scary as can be. So it's already very hard to be able to tell somebody what is real and what is not real.
Mhm.
So when you have a chip in your head that can simulate everything you see, smell, and taste, that's scary.
It's
So
scary.
I love it what it is in principle, and it's going to help a lot of people who need that help. But Joe Sixpack, who just wants to play the new Call of Duty game, so he gets a Neuralink, he might be in for a bit of a surprise. I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, by the way. Mrs. Hogg calls him Daddy Musk. I don't fully trust Elon, but I don't fully trust anyone.
No.
So never hand over everything without question. All people are people. I really think that while men might not be inherently evil, power has a tendency to corrupt people.
Oh, yes.
And Elon seems pretty level-headed, and the technologies he's invested in are really for the good of humanity.
Mhm.
He's also a bit of a troll, so we share that in common. But I know that even though I have strived to live a good life and to be a good man, you give me the keys to the kingdom, and I can't guarantee you that I will be a benevolent leader.
Yeah, no.
So
Mm.
we need to be careful, and altering your body with things like this, I don't know.
It's scary. Hey?
I don't even have tattoos.
Oh, don't you?
No. My philosophy on tattoos is there is nothing in my life that I have loved for my entire life that I don't want it permanently on my body.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, that's ridiculous. It's like, well, if I was a little kid and got a tattoo, I'd have a dinosaur on me. And I don't really want to have a dinosaur on me. And it's like, well, you're an adult now. You can make decisions. Like, okay, so fine. Let's hypothetical, scenario here. I'm a bit of a hippie, a peacenik. I like the peace sign. So I decide to get a little peace sign on my shoulder because, I'm a hippie. It's not going to hurt anybody. Peace, right?
Mhm.
Peace, love, groovy stuff.
Absolutely.
So let's say 5 years down the road, some maniac is in a baby butchering cult, and he decides that his cult symbol is going to be the peace sign. So all of a sudden, the innocent little peace sign has been branded with the symbol of a baby butcherer. So I am stuck walking through life with the symbol of a baby butcher on me. And people will say, oh, come on, that's totally unrealistic. That will never happen. It's like, really? Have you ever talked to an Indian person about the swastika?
Yeah.
It was co-opted.
Yeah.
And now when you see a swastika, it is a sign of evil and Nazis and everything.
Yeah.
Where at one time it was peace and love.
Peace and love.
So, yeah, no tattoos for me. I had very good parents that taught me not to draw on myself.
Yeah.
So. As I'd mentioned earlier, there are times when you can't go back and say you are sorry. So don't let little things fester. We are humans. We act irrationally all the time. I always say, as long as there are two people on the planet, there will always be war. That just seems to be inherent in our design. If you're acting like a jerk, or the other person's acting like a jerk, be the better person. Overlook it. You can say, hey, you're being a jerk, but you know what? I still love you. You're still my brother. You're still my friend. Because there are times when you cannot go back and say you are sorry. Or if you are one of those that, well, they need to come to me and tell me they're sorry. They might not be around to tell you that they're sorry. So, if you have a blow up or a spat, that's great. but get over it real quick. They say never go to bed angry. Well, never go to bed without having told someone you're sorry
Mm.
or telling them that you accept their actions, even though you don't fully agree with it.
Mm.
So yeah, never pass up the chance to resolve a conflict. Life is short. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to pass away due to kidney failure. However, I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. So, don't say, well, I got 5 years ahead of me, so everything's going to be great. No, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, don't take life for granted. Never pass up the opportunity to tell someone you're sorry. Never pass up the opportunity to tell them that you love them. My wife gets irritated with the number of times I tell her I love her. When I hang up the phone, I tell her that. When I leave the door, I'm going somewhere, I make sure, because I want to make sure that if something were to happen to me or to her, my last words were, I love you, because it's important. Yep. So this Horcrux is never be too proud to say that you're sorry. Even when you might not feel you were in the wrong. What's more important is that we all get along and that we all know we are loved. It's one of the most important things in the world. And when someone is gone, you still carry that love in you. And as long as they live in your heart and in your mind, while physically they're not here, they still exist in a way, even if it's just inside of you.
Are you afraid to die?
No, not really. I'm really interested in what's next, and I can't tell you what's next because I don't know. It's no one can tell you what happens in the afterlife until they're dead, and then they can't really tell you what happened. So it's the big unknown. So if somebody wants to tell me that it is darkness and you are gone, if somebody wants to tell me that you are reincarnated, maybe as another person, maybe as an object, you might be a daisy in a field. Hey, if that's their belief, who am I to tell them that they may or may not be wrong? Some people believe a divine creator in the sky, be he God, be he Allah, be he the flying spaghetti monster. Hey, none of us are experts, but there's one thing I do know is God does not need you to send a preacher man money. Those people are grifters.
Yes, they are. Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yes. The irony is I am actually ordained by the Universal Life Church, and I even got my virtual persona Davidhogg to be ordained. So I am the Reverend Davidhogg. And of course, one of the things that you can do is you can absolve people of their sins.
Wow.
Yes. So, it's quite a bit of power. And unfortunately, I'm also a comedian. So I'm afraid that the first person that takes me up on that offer, when they have told me what they have done, I will probably look them in the eye and go, you know what? You might want to find somebody else for that one.
Thanks for the story, though.
But, I won't. But yeah, yeah, who knew I could go around absolving people of their sins? But it's nice. I get clergy parking at the hospital.
Oh, you do?
And I can stay after hours, after visiting hours, because I am clergy. And anytime I go camping at the state parks, I use the moniker Reverend, because I am a reverend. And the park rangers are so nice to me. Yeah. Can I bring you more wood? Everything fine. What can I do for you? I can ramble on forever. It's one of the reasons I became an evangelist at one point, is because I can talk forever. Matter of fact, when I had left evangelism, went to the game industry, I had a company try to get me back into evangelism, and they crammed in all of their interviews in one day. So I'd be interviewing for about 5 hours. And the guy had said, well, you've been doing this for 5 hours. You must be tired talking by now. And I said, if I can't go for more than 5 hours, you are looking at hiring the wrong guy. I went to, I think it's ulc.org, Universal Life Church.
Okay.
And it took 5 minutes. And anybody can become ordained. So I figure if we all become reverends, the world will be a better place.
Absolutely.
And for $20, you can send off for your little credentials kit. So you actually can park in clergy parking. And for $25, you can get a doctorate. So I'm thinking of either becoming a doctor of metaphysics or a doctor of divinity. I think I'm going to choose metaphysics just because your average Joe isn't smart enough to know what that is. And all they'll latch onto is physics. And they'll think that I'm smarter than I actually am.
Oh.
So.
Oh, what fun. So would you go to Mars?
If they had on board dialysis, yes.
Yeah.
I won't live long, but yeah, I would go to Mars. As a kid, I kind of dreamed of being the person that got to go on that spaceship. And even though it'd be a long journey, I'm good on my own. So I would gladly volunteer to be the person that ran the functions on the ship while everybody else slept. They have them in cryonic suspension. And I have no problem in being the one that lives my life in the little capsule, traveling through space and keeping everyone else alive. And when it's my time, I wake up my replacement, make sure they're functioning, and, go off to sunset myself, knowing that my actions have quite possibly colonized another world. NASA used to have this poster saying, what shows that we're the most intelligent creatures on Earth are knowing that we have to leave it to survive.
Ooh.
And I saw that as a kid in, I think, Omni magazine, and that really, really inspired me because it is true. We are on a rock with finite resources, and in a moment's notice, this rock can be knocked out of its orbit. The life-ending events can happen any moment, be it a bus, be it an asteroid. So if we believe in our species, we need to colonate other planets, to spread our seed, Yeah. Now, other alien worlds might see that as being invaders. That's a bridge we cross when we come to it. You would hope that a spacefaring civilization would become advanced enough to put apart their petty squabbles. We have wars here on Earth all the time, but you would think that when we united as one world, and what's funny, I'm totally against globalism, but I believe in states' rights. The federal government, as far as I'm concerned, is too much consolidated power. But I believe that as a planet, we need to put aside our differences and work towards a common goal. That doesn't mean we need to have one world government. I'm totally opposed to that. But we do need to all be moving in the same direction.
Do you think that blockchain technology and P2P technology is going to give us that opportunity to replace government and for us to rule the world, each one of us 60 billion?
Blockchain is truly what they call opening the kimono. You have exposed yourself and you have no secrets on the blockchain. Everybody that's playing the game has a copy of that chain. Yeah. So if you figured out a way to monkey with that chain, the majority of people are like, excuse me, we are keepers of the blockchain. We are keepers of the truth. And the thing that you are trying to tell us is the truth is not the truth. And we have the receipts to prove it. So blockchain exposes the truth. If I have somebody's address, I can go look on the blockchain and I can tell you when they bought a currency, where they moved it to. There's no hiding stuff. When we're looking at people keeping paper books or computer books, those can be fudged really easy. So as long as the blockchain is kept alive, because it's a living document that cannot be altered. So, unlike 1984, where they changed the past to control the future, you can't do that in a blockchain. And you can pretty much embed anything in the blockchain. Having said that, NFTs, I feel, are a ripoff. The only way to make money on an NFT is either be the person that sold it originally or to find a sucker to take one off your hands. And eventually you run out of suckers. And that's just the way it works.
What happens if tokenize everything becomes an actual way of life? What do you think the world will look like?
It will be a world where there are more truths and untruths. False things will not be happening on the blockchain. It becomes a point of reference, almost like a history book that is kept. It is a digital ledger that can't be altered, and we all take part in carrying on this ledger with us. The Bible, it wasn't a book that fell from space. It was written in its original language, and it gets translated. And every time it gets translated, it gets a bias applied to it. And then even times when it's not being translated, it just gets rewritten. It gets a bias applied to it. The King James Bible was sculpted to serve a purpose. So unlike the Bible, the blockchain is immutable. It cannot be changed. Whereas it is so easy to alter a line of text to change the meaning of something. And, lately you see people are modifying definitions of almost every word to the point where it means the opposite of what it meant originally. So we're running into disagreements based on the language being used. Blockchains are numbers. There's no argument over numbers. A 2 is a 2, and a 2 represents 1 and 1 of something. There is no in between. A 2 does not represent 1.5 of something. It does not represent 3 of something. It's a 1 and a 1. Math and numbers are universal. So the blockchain will keep the truth. It'll keep the record, and there's no denying it. And you can't go back and interpret a blockchain. A blockchain is what it is.
And is there any harm in doing away with falsehood? Now, my answer is no. But from your perspective,
again, a double-edged sword, and we will take it to the most basic of elements. Your partner puts on an outfit and says, "Does this make me look fat?" And it's not a flattering outfit, but are you going to say the truth, or are you going to encapsulate it in a little white lie? No, that doesn't make you look fat, but hey, where's that blue dress that I like? Why don't you put that one on? So I have lied, which is a sin, basically. But I did it for what I felt were good intentions. If you turn around and tell your significant other, yeah, that makes you look fat, they might not be fat. They might not even be chubby. They might not even be slightly overweight. But yes, there are some things that are unflattering. I look terrible in wide stripes. So we were born to lie for a reason. It really comes down to your intents and purposes on why you do that. Mm-hmm. So a world where you're incapable of lying would not be necessarily a good world. We have to get along with each other, and sometimes that requires lies. Mm-hmm. It's the type of lie in which I have a problem. The blockchain will never ask if this outfit makes my butt look big.
Yeah.
It doesn't concern itself with those things.
Yeah.
But it does concern with the movement of currencies
Yes.
and items.
And
These NFT things. And anything can be an NFT now. So it does keep track of that. It's ideal for copyright and patenting things. It's like, here's the ledger. This shows that, I entered this in the ledger on this date. This was my idea, my concept. There is no such thing as rewriting history in the blockchain. It puts us all on equal footing. It really does.
Yes.
And it's something anybody can play with. Now, it does require a certain level of technology. However, that technology is truly affordable to anyone. Mines, I probably wouldn't do it. When Bitcoin first came out, I was like, that's stupid. Why would you throw away $20 to buy something that doesn't really exist? Dumbest thing in the world. And at the time, I was making really good money, and I could have bought $100 in Bitcoin, and I thought it was stupid.
Yeah.
If I had done it then, I would have my own island.
Yes. And there are quite a few people who have islands nowadays, aren't there?
Yes, exactly. So mines with their token kind of introduced me into, the utility of a cryptocurrency. So I dabble in crypto. I never invest money that you can't afford to lose.
Can't afford to lose.
So I have very, very little money in crypto. It is more of a hobby, and I Dogecoin. It's like, when it got down to 15 cents, it's like, if I don't spend $20 on Dogecoin, I'm going to have the same regret I had with Bitcoin. And, worst case scenario, I'm out the $20 that, I would have spent on a Slurpee and a thing of fries anyway. So, I am part of history now. I am part of the blockchain.
Listen, Reverend Hogg, thank you very, very, very much indeed. And I hope you have a really wonderful day today.
Oh, I will. I make the most of every day.
Bless you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening. To support me in my ventures, please subscribe, tip, and remind my content here on minds.com. If you're not yet a member of Minds, hop on over and set up your own free and uncensored channel. Remember to come back next week to catch the next in the series Bobbing Along from @bobdub on minds.com. This has been a Bobcat production. And until next time, so long. Bob, bob, bobbing, bob, bob, bobbing, bobbing along, bobbing along. Bob, bob, bobbing, bob, bob, bobbing, bobbing along, bobbing along.